Prisoner John Rambo works in a stone quarry while serving a sentence for committing a pogrom in an American town. The warden approaches him and orders him to go to the checkpoint. There he is met by his former commander, Colonel Samuel Trautman. Instead of serving the remaining 5 years of his sentence, Trautman offers Rambo a deal with justice: temporary reinstatement in the ranks of the armed forces in exchange for participation in a secret operation, and a presidential decree on amnesty with the expungement of all criminal records if it is successfully completed. After some deliberation, John agrees. He, accompanied by military police, is brought by helicopter to a US military base somewhere in Thailand. There he meets Trautman and meets Marshal Murdoch, a high-ranking Washington official employee of an unnamed US congressional committee in charge of the operation. Murdoch tells Rambo about the Viet Cong concentration camp for American prisoners of war, from where John escaped in 1971. According to preliminary intelligence data, the camp should be empty. Rambo's task is to infiltrate the camp and, with the help of photographs, confirm or deny information about the presence of prisoners in it, without allowing himself to be detected and without engaging in battle with the enemy. Murdoch reports that during the war in 1966, he served as an officer in the Tuan Battalion, 3rd Regiment, 3rd Marine Division in Kontum. Murdoch assures John that the chances of success are higher than the probability of failure of the operation, and that to ensure its success, an entire command and computing center with a large number of electronics and maintenance personnel will be deployed at the base, which will work only to provide Rambo with up-to-date information. Murdoch asks his assistants to get him something cold to get out of this damn heat, at which time John notices that the soda fountain only has 1 can of Coke reserved for Murdoch personally, which does not imply a long stay. It is there and hints that the entire operation being carried out and the newest equipment brought there is some kind of bluff to cover up the waste of budget funds. Murdoch especially emphasizes to John that under no circumstances should he engage in battle with the enemy and try to free prisoners if they are discovered for these purposes. According to the plan of the operation, a special assault group with the Delta Squad and Colonel Trautman should be sent to Chapter. Standing at the door of the plane on the runway before takeoff, Rambo tells Trautman that the Tuan Battalion was based in Kasan rather than Kontum at the time, which is why he doesn't believe a word Murdoch says, and that Trautman is his former commander, the only one he trusts. John flies on a transport plane to the landing site. At the moment of the jump, his equipment clings to the side of the plane, and he is forced to cut the fastening straps with a knife. As a result, he lands successfully, having lost almost all of his equipment during the release, with the exception of his combat knife and a bow with several arrows. In the jungle, Rambo finds his contact, who turns out to be the Vietnamese woman Co Bao. Together, they hire a pirate boat and sail down the river to take a shortcut. They reach the camp in the evening. Rambo enters the camp, where he finds prisoners, and taking one of them out, kills several patrolmen with a bow. In the morning, the alarm is raised in the Vietnamese camp, and all the soldiers go in pursuit. The heroes sail part of the way along the river. However, the river pirates are not going to deliver them to their final destination, but plan to sell them profitably to the Vietnamese. For this, they hold them at gunpoint in order to hand the heroes over to the crew of a Vietnamese patrol boat that appears on the horizon. But Rambo, taking advantage of the pirates' carelessness, he kills them all, and at the same time deals with the enemy patrol boat. John and his fellow travelers head to the designated evacuation point. The Americans send a transport helicopter in which Colonel Trautman is also flying. The evacuation team spots Rambo from the air, as well as 1 prisoner, and radios to the base. The base personnel are rejoicing, but Murdoch, having heard about the rescue of the prisoner, unexpectedly for all those present, gives the order to cancel the operation, since he is not interested in saving the prisoners. The instructions he received do not imply such a development of events according to the plans of the tops. The entire operation was carried out for reporting and calming public opinion regarding the fate of 25,000 American prisoners of war and missing in action, and did not provide for their actual release, for which the leadership only required photographs of, if possible, empty prisoner of war camps, and not their living inhabitants. The helicopter returns back to base, and Rambo and the prisoner are surrounded by the Vietnamese, and he has no choice but to surrender. His hands are tied to a rocker and placed waist deep in a fetid sewer pit. A helicopter carrying Soviet paratroopers arrives at a Vietnamese base. They are commanded by Lieutenant Colonel Podolsky. In the evening, Podolsky interrogates Rambo, brutally tortures him, and when it becomes clear that Rambo is not affected by physical bullying, he threatens to torture another prisoner of war. Then he plays a trump card in front of Rambo, providing him with radio interception of communications between the evacuation group and the American headquarters. Realizing that Murdoch had betrayed him, Rambo agrees to make radio contact with his own people, but only to promise Murdoch revenge. After this, he escapes. At the same time, Co infiltrates the base and helps Rambo escape. They flee the base, pursued by a combat helicopter and Soviet paratroopers. The next day, John is ambushed. He shoots all the enemies, but Co, who managed to fall in love with John, dies. Rambo takes her talisman and buries her in the jungle. Fueled by hatred and revenge, Rambo destroys Soviet paratroopers in the jungle. There is a commotion. Rambo, meanwhile, runs to a nearby village, simultaneously blowing up Viet Cong vehicles and burning soldiers in thickets of dry bamboo. Near the waterfall, John is overtaken by a Soviet helicopter. When the helicopter descended almost to the surface of the water, Rambo emerges and climbs into the helicopter, simultaneously throwing the Soviet crew out of it, and flies to the Viet Cong base. Using the helicopter's weapons gun pods with unguided rockets and machine guns, Rambo shoots all the enemy soldiers at the base and rescues the prisoners. They are flying home. Suddenly, they are overtaken by a heavy Soviet helicopter piloted by Lieutenant Colonel Podolsky. An air battle ensues, and seriously wounded people appear among the escaped prisoners, but they themselves manage to kill the gunner of the helicopter pursuing them. Using military stratagem, Rambo manages to blow up an enemy helicopter. Finally, Rambo reaches the base with the prisoners. In a fit of anger, he bursts into the base and shoots all the computers with a machine gun. John attacks Murdoch and, cutting off his pathetic excuses, warns, "You know that there are still our prisoners there. Find these people. Otherwise, I will find you." Rambo is nominated for a second Medal of Honor, but he refuses and suggests that Trautman reward the prisoners of war since, in his opinion, they suffered through it. The colonel also invites John to stay in the army, but he does not want to. After all, his dead friends and a part of him remain here.